Oh man, what a great time. I'm so excited. So you're here, we're here. You're listening to the best podcast in the 815. This is Beyond the Cube. You've got Bob. Along with me always is Vincent. Say what up, Vince.
What up, Vince? I'm here for real. Trust me.
But not only is it just me and you, Vince, today, we have a special guest. I am just so excited for a lot of reasons. I'm so happy to introduce the one and only Bryz Blue from the Ivy Boys. Bryz, how's it going?
What's up? I'm so happy to be here. This is going to be so fun.
Yes. Today is a great day, you guys. Today, weather-wise up here in the 815 was absolutely just like terrible. It just feels like it's just snowing all the dang time. It's snow, ice. It's just horrible right now. But today's a great day. It's basically like a national holiday, for me personally. So, pitchers and catchers for the Cubs reported today in Mesa. Bryz, how does that make you feel?
Well, I mean, you could probably hear how it makes me feel. Like I have, no joke, been smiling ear to ear all day. I have so many things to be happy about today. The weather here is awful as well, so we won't talk about that. But I listened basically to Chicago sports radio all day, and a lot of it, they were broadcasting from Mesa, and the vibes are very positive there. Like everybody's in very good spirits. It put me in a very good mood. I wore my Cubey blue. I watched all my Cubey highlights. I'm still waiting for that one really good, like, pump up 2019 video. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot of reasons to be excited, you guys, and people are really overlooking this team, and that makes me excited by itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just some of the things that we've sort of been hearing and stuff, just the forecast of what people are predicting for this team and the season, and I just don't get it, man. Like, I mean, you've kind of had told me just yesterday that and even Vince, you touched on this as well too, that it's being predicted that we're not going to win as many games as St. Louis this year. Like, I don't see that at all whatsoever. What do you think about that?
I mean, I can see where people would think that, but unless you really study this Chicago Cubs team like we do, then you don't really understand all the things that had to go wrong last year for them to turn out the way that they did. I mean, we had injury on top of injury. We had uncharacteristically bad years from players that we know that's not going to be, how they play going forward. So, yeah, I mean, if your team's in our division, basing your hopes and dreams on how we were last year might not be the best route to go, because I really don't see that 2018 Chicago Cubs team returning ever again. Like, I just see, there's too many hardworking, talented players on this roster for them to turn out another season like that. And the really crazy part about all this, and we really have to look at from an outside perspective, is they won 95 games. Like, we are talking about them like they won 75 games. I mean, they won 95 games, and we still had so many things go wrong. Our offense, just kind of disappeared at the end of the season. I mean, we had, an injured Chris Bryant for the majority of the season, who really started off on such a promising note. The more I think about it, and yes, listen, I'm just like anybody else. I would have loved to sign one of these big names available in the off season. And I'm not completely convinced that there's not somebody else coming, but I've completely talked myself into being stoked about our on-field product right now. I mean, if you just look at the guys that did not have great years last year, and even if they can just improve a little bit, we are that much better than we were last year, and we won 95 freaking games last year. I mean, I don't see it. I don't see how they're predicting the Cubs to only win what was it now, like 82 games this year?
Right. Yeah.
I guess their latest prediction was 81, and it was a computer program, so we know how computers can be reliable. like that.
Oh my
I
gosh.
guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't understand. I mean, like I said, half joking with you guys, if Tyler Chatwood is, throwing 2 spots in the rotation, then maybe. But I mean, I don't get it. I mean, even if these guys look at our rotation, even if these guys, 2 of them have a bad day, I mean, you're still turning out, 3 wins that week. I mean, it just,
Absolutely.
to me, it's crazy, and I really can't wait to prove everybody wrong. I'm really looking forward to that.
It's yeah.
I
We
know.
go ahead,
No, I was
Vince.
gonna say during the press conference today too. It's like I know. I think it was Theo was talking about how like this winter, like it was really focused on the players improving. Like each player really went into the off season like knowing what they needed to kind of do and focus on, and that he's even excited about how well that went. With like even the first reports to camp. So, I mean, something like that definitely gets you hyped up.
Oh
Well,
man, yeah. Go ahead.
and looking at some of the video and the pictures that a lot of the Chicago sports media have put up just today on between Twitter and Facebook, there are so many position players there right now, and I mean, they're already there. I mean, they look like the almost the entire team is there, and they're working on stuff that you can tell that they've already been kind of gearing themselves up for. Like when I say that, like Wilson Contreras in the batting cage, obviously he's been taking swings in the off season. You don't just step in the batting cage and go ripping on some of the balls the way that I watched him hitting today. It was like insane. Like that these kids walked away from that season last year like, this is not okay. Like, we have to do something about this. So, have a chip on your shoulder, guys, because guess what? Everybody else is kind of laughing at you right now. So, you have a lot to prove.
That's very true. That's really going towards you, Nathan, you, Zach, and you, Trisha. Just kidding. But yeah, no. So we kind of talked a little bit yesterday, and I had the story that I had. I'm going to go ahead and tell real quick that work wise, we had something that was really frustrating that me and Vince were kind of going through, and there was a lot of different pieces that were involved, and it was extremely intense, and it took up about a half of the day to kind of go through this whole entire process, and so with the company that we work at, we have, I mean, the office is massive, and we have so many people, and even though there's people that are literally like 50 feet away from you, like I literally have no idea what they do. Like I walk by and I may see their nameplate and what their job title is, but like I don't know what that means. Like I kind of can sort of guess. Well, Vince, knows Paula and talks to Paula, and she's kind of been our go-to for a few things. But I personally have never met Paula, and I've never seen her. It's just been through email, and there was never any sort of face-to-face. And so I had this issue, and I wanted to go directly to her to go tell her what I just sort of went through. And so I'm kind of sort of got this just like rambling of like, oh my gosh, blah, 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 this is what happened. And then she in turn is just like, because she was into it way more than me and Vince were involved. And so she is just blah, 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 just going on and stuff. And it was about a 5-minute discussion of work. And, the awesome part about it though, was literally like, as soon as that was done, and keep in mind, like I've never met Paula personally. And, thinking about it, there was no like Cubs decoration on her desk or anything. She immediately just went into, hey, do you know what tomorrow is? And I was like, yeah. So like, and Paula really kind of opened my eyes, and Bryz, you totally reinforced it, that this team, like, okay, so, it's extremely enticing when you got like 2 youngsters that are still very much in their prime and who have plenty of years of solid, good baseball left, in them. I mean, and also the fact that like one of them is like best friends and basically grew up with like your star player. I mean, it's literally like too good to be true. But like, I'm not even gonna lie, I was so drunk on the Kool-Aid that we were getting Harper. Like, you couldn't tell me. You seriously couldn't tell me that we weren't going to get him, even though everything that was said that we were going to. And, you know, you would hear all these rumors and you know, yeah, there was no movement on the Cubs. And so that made me think, okay, Theo's lying in the weeds. Like, you know, he's, you know, we're going to be making a move and stuff. And like nothing really happened. And, you know, it's that whole like romanticized, like, let's make a move and let's just, you know, let's do this. But like, Bryz, you, like I said, you reinforced it, you know, like, looking at this team and this roster and the projected starting rotation, like, why would anybody sleep on the Cubs right now?
Oh gosh, because it's easy to. It's easy to. I mean, look for how many years we were tortured. I mean, you know, it's not like this is uncharted territory for us. Like, this is, if you ask fans of any other team, even knowledgeable fans of any other team in all of baseball, this is where the Cubs actually belong. You know what I mean? Like who they have been the past 3 or 4 seasons, and as good as they've been and as big as a threat they've been to any team, they ultimately are going to find their way back to the basement. Like, just because that's who we were for so long. You know, I mean, you can't believe when somebody shows you who they are for a period of time, you have to start to believe that's who they actually are. So it's just much easier to believe that the Cubs are that team, that it was all a fluke. It was a hoax. They're going to end up in that spot again. So it's just easier to think of them that way. But you also have to keep in mind that you're talking about people that don't know this team, that have not studied this team. So, I mean, it just comes down to everybody. Like I said, if everybody can just perform just a little bit better than last year, I mean, I don't see how we can't win as many, if not more games than we did last year. Our rotation is improved. I mean, we have Hamels the entire season. You know, and he's going to have his ups and downs. Obviously, he's not as young as he used to be, but we also have a very strong and determined Yu Darvish, who is, I feel like, is going to make a difference right off the bat. I mean, I like it more when people expect nothing from us, because that's exactly the way we went into 2016. They did not expect anything from us. They had nothing. We were on nobody's radar. We're still on people's radar right now. We're definitely on people's radar, but people feel like, and I'm even talking about, you know, if you're reading the sports media in other cities, if you're reading the national guys on MLB Network and ESPN and all those guys, I mean, to them, and the tone that I'm taking from what I'm reading from them, this is a very mediocre team. So, okay, cool. Let us go into this season as a mediocre team. Let us, just for a minute, let's pretend that's the case. Look around our roster, our depth chart, and tell me how hard and how bad something would have to break for this team to be mediocre. I mean, there is just too much talent on this team. And any halfway knowledgeable baseball person can see that. Dissect this team position by position and tell me there is not top talent on this team. Like, honestly, it's just, to me, it's more people are needing the Cubs to be bad because they're the lovable losers. What are people going to talk about if the Cubs aren't bad? You know, I mean, can't possibly give them credit and say they're good. We could never do that. Why would we do that? So, yeah, I mean, it's just easier for people to really just perceive them as the team that they've been for so long. But right now is our window. So if we don't jump on this and make something happen, like, I will be really disappointed. Like, this is when it needs to happen. This is when it needs to come together. These guys are grown-ass men that have the ability to do that. They're professionals. They know what it takes. So, you know, they have to meet themselves halfway and get it done, you know, and just really come out with that chip and that edge and make things happen. Because last year, I really feel like we are missing that.
Man, absolutely.
No, so okay, so we do have a couple questions here, and I'm gonna jump in with this one with from Jerry Meeks from Facebook. He was asking, do you think Joe will be back with the team next year? And if not, who would be a good young replacement?
Well, I love Jerry. Hi, Jerry. I hope you're listening. Jerry has been listening to the Ivy Boys for a while. So
Nice.
Yeah, he's a good guy. We've actually had him on with us before. So,
That's true. That is very true. Right.
Yes, we've had Jerry on with us. So, Jerry, I honestly, and I know that there is so many different opinions on this particular topic, and this is something that people feel very strongly about. I'm just going to say this. If Joe is not back, at least for another couple years, or at least until he decides that he's ready to stop coaching, there's serious issues with people. Serious issues.
I agree.
This man is, I mean, I can't even wrap my brain around the thought that people want him gone. I will say I am fully prepared for the fact that they are probably grooming a couple young people on the coaching staff to take over for him, but they need to at least sign him for another, I don't even want to say 5 years, because I really think that if the Cubs can pull together another ring or two, I think Joe will probably throw the towel in and say that he's ready to go ahead and hang it up. But I mean, there's until he tells us that he's ready to be done, I think we have to keep him. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. Here's the comparison I make. And this is kind of, if we have hockey players, it's kind of the same way that it was with Q, because like the second Q got released, do you know how many Blues? I live in St. Louis, so I have a ton of friends that are Blues fans. And when Q got released by the Blackhawks, I had no less than 20 text messages or Facebook posts or whatever about, send him our way. We'll take him, please. They were in a situation where they needed a good guy. So my thought is this: if we decide not to sign him, and I hate that he's going in 2019 kind of in limbo, but if we decide not to re-sign him, would you rather play with him on your team, on your side, or would you rather play against him? And I'm going to say every single time, I would rather him be on the Cubs side. I do not want to play against that guy, because we've already seen how he manages the youngsters. And it makes me laugh when people are like, "Oh, he has no idea how to coach millennials." Blah 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 blah. Millennials are they're still human beings. I mean, they're still athletes. They're still grown men. He knows how to deal with all of those things. So I get it that there's a different mentality there, but I think people are they're looking for something to complain about. And with Joe, I mean, you really have to search hard. This man brought us a ring after a gazillion years. We have to keep him around as long as we possibly can. That's just to me, that's the bottom line. And then, you know what, after he gives us a couple more good years, then we'll talk about who they're grooming to bring into his spot. But as far as I'm concerned, Joe's the guy.
I know at the end of last year, it was crazy too, because that was like one of the biggest topics. It's like,
man,
is he going to even make it to the beginning of this season? And now that's one of those things where it's like, why would it's like it wasn't like it was a bad season, and it's like
Right.
It wasn't like the previous ones were like terrible either. It's like, why would you, if you have a decent thing going, it's like, why would you try and change it up that drastically?
Right.
So.
Right. Well, and just like just like the players, just like anybody else, he has a boss that he has to answer to. And at the end of this season, just like everybody did their exit interviews, he got pulled into Jed and Theo's offices, and they went through the whole spiel. This is where we feel like you need to improve. This is where we feel like you could do things differently. This is where you could utilize this. This is where you could stay away from this. That happened. It happened because there was a lot of those things. There was a laundry list of those things. So do you think for a second that Joe walked away from those meetings thinking, you know what, I'd rather go coach some ho-hum team that's not going to give me top tier players and possibly a shot at another World Series? Yeah, I'm not even going to work on any of that stuff we just talked about. I'm going to do what I want to do. And if I have to go find another job, no way. Joe is a competitor and he knows what he's got. So there is no doubt in my mind that that man is going to flip the script this year and he is going to figure some stuff out just like everybody else.
Well, that was the one point that I did catch today, was that, like, if you actually look, through the shenanigans and stuff, like, from 2016 compared to, where they're at currently right now. So granted, spring training just started, but last year you didn't see, like, the petting zoo. You didn't see, like, some of the more outlandish stuff that he did when they were more, a little bit looser and free spirited in 2016. So that was exactly something that that Boris or Bernstein and McKnight, were discussing around noon, was just like, is he sort of maturing as well, along with, the core that he was with, that he originally first started with. And I am in a 100% agreement, as far as, like, who do you replace Joe with? Like, you don't downgrade. And to me, like, there was some circumstances that just, like, it was just like a really kind of thing, and that like sort of like the fluke thing. So like the whole, Pedro Strop, trying to run out the butt and getting injured and stuff, where we could have used him in that during, towards the end of last season. Like, I mean, seriously, like what kind of are the odds, and like how would you expect really to foresee that happening? Pedro Strop is a great athlete, and I would assume that he could, decently run to first base and stuff. But I am in agreement. It's like, he was an integral part in bringing a World Series to Chicago. I mean, like, the dude, like, legit, like, pretty much kind of owns Chicago, really. And yeah, I mean, you let him stay for, you let him stay. You let him stay until he's ready to leave. I mean, I think he actually deserves it. Really, he truly does.
Well, and the whole Pedro Strop thing, like, to me, I was angry, and I'm not going to lie. I mean, if anybody that's listening listens to the Ivy Boys podcast, I was fuming. I mean, Chipper was too. I want to say that was probably the first time that he and I both raised our voice in one podcast. We were definitely, we were very angry. You know what? And we're allowed to be angry as fans. We're allowed to question moves like that. We're allowed to do all of those things. I consider myself an athlete still, but I was, an athlete all through college and everything else. And I played softball. So, like, putting myself in a real game situation like that, you have to wonder what was going through everybody's minds to say that made sense. But, I am not a professional baseball player. I don't manage a professional baseball team. So, until I have that on my resume, I really can't, like, make those decisions for him, So he has a lot of different tools, and he has a lot of different methods, and he's got a lot of different reasons for doing things. And he is a different cat, and he is always, marched to his own beat. And so I'm not going to start questioning whether stuff like that are deal breakers for him having a job with the Chicago Cubs. Like, to me, that's just, that was a fluke thing. It was a one-off situation. You ask him 10 times over if he regrets making that move, and he will say it. He still, when he's asked about it, says no, he does not. He would still do it exactly the way that he did it. And I think the one time he even joked and was like, and I bet you this time Strop wouldn't hurt his leg, like it was just like one of those things. So, you can't, you're allowed to question it, and you're allowed to be angry, and you're allowed to wonder, but you really can't say that something like that is the reason why he's not a good coach. Like, it doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely. So, once again, it's today is February 12th, 2019. It is pitchers and catchers reporting day. You're listening to Beyond the Cube. We have Bryz Blue from the Chipper and Bryz show over at theivyboys.com. Wow. So Bryz, you're in St. Louis. And we have, two guys that work in our department that are legit hardcore St. Louis fans. St. Louis made a couple of moves. They picked up, it was Andrew Miller for the bullpen, and they also got Goldie, which was super funny because I believe did you guys have a podcast that sort of went and discussed what he was actually being called when he got picked up by St. Louis?
I was gonna say you guys needed to have some like music when you said that I live in St. Louis. Like you needed to have some like womp womp. Yes. So I was kind of fooling around because obviously I tend to shake the hornet's nest a little bit living down here in St. Louis, and obviously I have a pretty decent following, and I'm friends with a couple of the radio personalities here in St. Louis, and they follow me on all the social media. So if I say something about St. Louis on any social media, it gets completely blasted by St. Louis Cardinal fans or whoever, which obviously I've lived here for 21 years now. 22 years now. And I'm used to it. I have very thick skin. There's not too much you can say to me that I haven't already heard. So I don't sweat the Cardinals fans come after me because they have the same comeback over and over again. But the funny part is, so when they signed Gold, I can't even say his right name now. I can't even say the right name because I always feel like I'm going to slip and say something that I shouldn't be saying in front of my children type thing. But so his name, for you folks that aren't quite sure on how it's actually pronounced, when he was in Arizona, it's Goldschmidt. There is a T at the end. There is an M in there, and it's Schmid. Okay. In St. Louis, when he got signed, there was a large contingent of folks that wanted to call him Goldsch. Gold. I can't say it. I'm gonna end up saying a bad word. They were not calling him the right name. So yes, we did almost. I think we did almost an entire podcast where I called him the incorrect name the entire time. And I had quite a few people reach out to me to correct me. And I'm like, you people must be out of your dang minds if you actually think I don't know who he is. So it's just really funny to me because, whenever St. Louis, and keep in mind, folks that don't have any clue who I am or my backstory, I am married to a Cardinals fan. I live in the city of St. Louis. I work in the city of St. Louis. I am very well aware of everything St. Louis. Okay, people, don't worry. I got it. Whenever St. Louis signs somebody, it could be, we're going to compare this to toys. Okay. Whenever St. Louis signs somebody, whether it's a very small toy or whether it's a very big toy, or it's kind of one of those obsolete toys that, nobody is really like after, but somehow or another it becomes your favorite toy, like it is a big deal. So all of the sudden now these people who I'm going to call them casual fans for lack of a better term, had no idea who Paul Goldschmidt was before he came to St. Louis. But now that he's in St. Louis, they have heard, they've probably heard of him, but they didn't know actually how good he was until now he is a St. Louis Cardinal. So now he automatically is the best first baseman in all of baseball, which is fine because we feel that way about Rizzo. So
right.
when they got this big, huge toy that is Paul Goldschmidt, now he is the greatest player in all of baseball. If you rewind back to like maybe last year when the Cardinals were playing Arizona, one of the, I don't know, maybe 6 or 9 times that they played each other, I guarantee there was a lot of not so he's the best baseball player in all of baseball stuff being said about Paul Goldschmidt when he lit them up for, when he went 9 for 12 and hit 3 home runs and had 17 RBIs against him, whatever. Those are totally not true numbers. I'm just making that up. But I'm saying it's just funny to me how it works, and the only player that they haven't really adapted to or really cared for their new toy is Dexter Fowler. Like he just is not, he's not really made his way into the circle of trust yet. And which I think is sad. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he is was fresh off of a World Series win with the Chicago Cubs. Obviously they're hated rivals. And now I'm seeing a lot more of him in the community. Like he's been to hockey games and he gets, like they put the Jumbotron on him at the hockey games and people cheer for him. And he's been, I heard that he's been out kind of in the nightlife again, kind of not obviously recently because he's probably down in Florida getting ready to report, but like over the off season. So he's obviously trying to garner some respect with the everyday fan here in St. Louis, because he just didn't have that, which is really sad because I still have mad love for Dexter and I'm still waiting to run into him so I can buy him that beer. But I mean, it just, to me, it's I mean, and I talk about the St. Louis Cardinals, but many of professional baseball teams, any teams actually, act the same way. Fans act the same way. But it's always just amusing to me because I'm on the inside. And I see it from that perspective. So I always just kind of chuckle because it's like when something happens, like, obviously our Addison Russell fiasco that's happening, or like the emails that were exposed on, the gentleman that has the same last name as the owner of our team, stuff like that. When that happens, of course, they have a zillion things to say down here. And I just kind of sit back and laugh because, there's plenty of things that happen on their watch that they choose to sweep under the rug. And I put all that stuff in my back pocket and I save it for a rainy day.
That's so awesome. So you pretty much tossed up two perfect segues, and I'm not really too sure which way I want to go. And so I feel like let's put a pin in the whole thing about like the organization and the things that have the off-field issues that have sort of had happened. But since you're discussing in you're in St. Louis, out of all of the teams in the division, what team do you fear the most currently right now, just based off of the moves that they've made?
I'm not really comfortable saying that I fear anybody.
Good point.
But I mean, because quite honestly, still you can match up anybody's depth chart head to head in this division, and it's going to be awfully close. I mean, there's so much talent in this division now. It's crazy. I think obviously the Brewers, they've lost some pieces. They signed a couple pieces, nothing major. Like if you scroll, and this is this has been my kind of daily routine, if you will. If you scroll down like transactions within the Central Division, actually, Milwaukee has a shorter list than the Chicago Cubs, which would surprise people because I know the Cubs fans feel like they haven't done anything. They actually have gotten a few pieces here and there. Nothing huge, nothing. Daniel Descalso. I mean, that should tell you everything. That's the biggest name that we got this offseason. Right. But we have gotten pieces. We've gotten a couple relief pitchers, which will be huge help. But Milwaukee has actually done less than us as far as number of players that they've moved in or out. And they're still going to be good, but let's be honest, people, if you know anything about baseball, you have to just look at the numbers. There is 3, maybe even 4 guys on that team that had career years, career, like they will never have another year like that in their baseball professional careers. It just won't happen. Like they played out of their minds and they deserve to get where they got. I mean, honestly, they do. They played really well at the end of the season when a lot of teams were starting to fatigue off. And honestly, the Cubs were one of those teams. So, quite frankly, I'm still looking at Milwaukee at the top of the division. I mean, they're definitely going to be, playing a lot of, there's going to be a lot of switcherooing going on probably in spots 1 through 3. But I really feel like, the Cardinals, Andrew Miller, if he can go back to his 2016 season, if he can have a little bit of that fountain of youth, he's not going to be bad for them. That might actually be a really good pickup for them. I still am convinced that David Ross broke him. And I'm fine with that. I'm honestly fine with that. And for him to come in the division, where obviously that he's he still obviously probably feels pretty bad about what happened against the Cubs in the World Series. So we'll see. I mean, that could be a mental thing for him too. Nobody is, that's still, you got to think about what that does to somebody, so that could still be a mental hurdle for him to get over. So we'll see how he does against us, but definitely, Paul Goldschmidt is definitely a Cub killer. There's no denying that.
Right.
But
yeah.
Like, I will say this, I'll say it tonight, I'll say it tomorrow night, I'll say it every day, I'll say it when he's up to bat. Paul Goldschmidt bats one time in a lineup of 9 guys. One time. If there's people on base, okay, yeah, he's going to hurt us. But he is not 9 guys in 9 batting spots. Honestly, he's not. He's one guy. Okay? And if he's the one guy that we're pitching around, okay, I'm fine with that. Walk him every single time. Walk him.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can't act like, just like we can't act like, Chris Bryant or Javi Baez, like these guys are batting 3 or 4 times in a lineup. They're not. It's one time in a 9-guy lineup. So yeah, Paul Goldschmidt's going to be tough. He's going to be, we're going to see him a ton, but at the same time, he's making adjustments. You think our pitchers aren't going to make adjustments? So, that remains to be seen. The other team that y'all need to keep an eye out for, and this is insane to me because I actually wrote down all the people that they got and who they still have, the Cincinnati Reds. Those guys are not playing. They are not playing. And yeah, a lot of these names are on the older side, but keep in mind that brings in experience, that brings in leadership, that brings in, my career is winding down. I probably need to go ahead and do something, So yeah, I would definitely keep an eye out for the Reds too. This division is going to be crazy. And honestly, now thinking about it and talking about it with you guys, somewhere in the 80s, win-wise, it might be accurate because we play these division people so many times. We're going to beat up on each other the entire season. I mean, and it's crazy to me how, there very easily could be 4 teams at the top fighting for that spot. And I definitely think the wild card comes from our division again as well.
Yeah.
So
that's a really good point. Just, if you look at just the team wise and stuff, like the Central literally is stacked now. It seems like it's been that way too. But like the same, just the moves that Paul Goldschmidt, like the numbers that he put up against the Cubs last year was just like, oh man, like like you just said, walk him every single time. Totally cool with that. Milwaukee, you know what though? Like I just sort of feel like Milwaukee totally earned 100% last year. It was just, it felt like it was one of those things where everything just kind of just went right for them and stuff, and we just completely, I felt like we totally we were tired, man. Like that first, all those rain delays from the beginning part of the season and stuff, and then that which equaled all the double headers and just just the long season. There was like that stretch that they had where like, what was it, like 20 something games in like basically like 20 days, 22 days or something, including travel. I still, I know it's just me being totally biased, but the fact that you bring up the Reds and, with Vince, I feel like I sort of forced like the whole sports fandom on him because like, he's just like, yeah, cool, whatever. He's actually right now searching for a team kind of to follow. And I think one of the bases that he's looking on is possibly colors. So Cincinnati Reds, Vince, man, that could be maybe your team this summer. Maybe it should be the Cubs, obviously, but just saying.
I don't know, man. Like I said,
you pledge no lines.
Wise, there's Even then, like if I was given the opportunity to like bet on teams, like even if I was like said I was like a devoted like Reds fan, which we obviously would not be happening, but even if I was like devoted to that fandom, I would still bet against them in games where it's like, yeah, they're gonna lose this one. I'm like, yeah, this pitcher is definitely the weak spot, and they're facing someone who's the pitcher who's like definitely on fire. I'm like, nope, Reds are losing. It's like, shouldn't you be supporting your team? I'm like, nah. So
Nah, it's okay. I'm good.
I look at the numbers, so you know.
Well, not to well, of course, I'm putting in a little shameless plug here, but tomorrow, or actually not tomorrow, next week when we record the Ivy Boys podcast, we have actually some very exciting news about inducting one of Chipper's friends into Cub fandom. He has now decided that he is going to be a Chicago Cubs fan. So we have some surprises on how we're going to do that, and we're going to turn it into quite the show. All Chipper's ideas, of course, because if it were my friend, I would want to be able to torture him however I see fit. So yeah, so just so you know, if you decide to go that route, we can definitely induct you on one of our shows if you would like.
We totally need to make that a thing. Can we please make that a thing?
Well, it's kind of funny. So growing up, like I used to live in the suburbs, like of Chicago. Like I was like legit probably like 10 minutes away from O'Hare, and we would hit up a few Cubs games like every year, like as I was growing up. And what was kind of cool is it's like we'd go to like was the last stop on, I think it was like Addison Street, like, and then catch the bus there. So it's like you basically get the whole trip like from like the end of the line all the way into the city, like right to the stadium. So it was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Except for the part where it's like you'd hit like I think it's the red line where all the fans would get on the bus there, and you'd go from like nobody on the bus to it being jam packed. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, it's fun though. I mean, I love the atmosphere. Like that is one of the big things. Is it's like I don't know. Even though I'm not a fan of like sports or sporting events, like going there and kind of just that experience is really the thing that kind of like I don't know, like really sells me on the whole deal. Like if someone's like, oh, it's like you want to go to a game, I'm like, yeah, sure, it'll be fun. So
that's whenever getting back to Wrigley, like that is my happy place. Like I literally, whenever I see this stadium, I mean, and I've been going there since I was 6 years old and I'm 40. So do the math on that. Every time I walk up, it's just like, and like it's just I have tears, it's butterflies, it's everything. And it's so funny because anytime anybody posts a picture or plays a video or anything like that where you can see any of the bits and pieces of the atmosphere of being at Wrigley, like I just put myself in that place, and like I can smell the food, I can hear the sounds, and like it just there is nothing in the world like it, and that is forever my happy place.
Man, so I also do want to also say too that so I have a friend so JP, I hope you're listening. I really, really, really hope you're listening right now because you could totally like co-sign this. So my buddy JP, he was not a baseball fan at all whatsoever. And this was about like 2013 or so, like right when we were kind of sort of doing, we were making moves and stuff. And Theo, comes in and takes the job. And I'm like, dude, if you were ever going to follow a team, like this right now is the reasoning for it. And like, so spring training came. And so we were discussing like who were the pitchers and why were they important and this and that. And so literally like that whole entire summer, we watched as many Cubs games as we could, that year, I can't remember exactly what we did that year, but basically he happened to kind of, when we went to the when we played the Mets, or when we ended the playoffs when we lost to the Mets, he called me crying because he finally was like, I understand what it is now, because he was a couple of years into it. He got to see Rizzo come up, he got to see Bryant come up and stuff. He was there with the core, and like then obviously 2016 comes and he's just like, he hasn't made it to Wrigley yet, and like that's like going to be the ultimate goal, because we have actually, Bryz, we have a friend that lives in Springfield that is a diehard Cardinals fan. So literally, Mike, that's the other thing too. So Mike, if you're listening, you still owe me tickets for that bet that we had. So literally, like we've been kind of talking about it for like the last like year and a half that like we just need to go to like a Cubs Cardinals game, but like I need for him to come up to Wrigley because like you said, like Wrigley is such a magical, awesome, amazing place. God, like it's yeah. JP, you better be listening. I'm gonna tag you as soon as we get this podcast up, so that way you do listen. We're on every streaming channel now, so there's no reason for you not to.
So the spot that is kind of funny that you like really. So growing up, I remember we used to do a lot more hockey games than we used to do baseball. So like kind of being from the whole area, like I was really like, I don't know, 20 minutes away from like the Rosemont Horizon when it was that. And like when the Hawks would play there or when the Chicago Wolves would play there, that was kind of like, yeah, it was kind of like the spot for me. And even kind of later in the suburb years too, I was the same thing. It's like, even though they changed the name to the Allstate Arena, like would still go there for the Wolves games. And no, like the way you guys kind of like think about Wrigley is kind of the same way that I remember like really the Horizon, because that was like, yeah, just right there in town. It was just, man, good times.
Oh, I love sports.
I mean, I'm not a sports fan. I have no history. No, I'm just playing.
That's okay. We'll still accept you.
So, all right. We do have another question from Facebook from CJ. He was wondering, are there any more moves the Cubs will make this offseason if no Harper? Any positions? And he's also asking, do you think that the Cubs might be the mystery team for Machado?
There's a lot of questions. Okay. So thank you so much for asking all the questions. I definitely think that they will go after another reliever. They've already, two guys that we've signed, Brad Brock and Tony Barnett, are both bullpen guys. Just very loosely glance at their numbers, and they both look like they can be contributors. But I definitely think they'll go after another piece. There's still, I pulled the list earlier today and I can't think off the top of my head, but there's still quite a few relievers out there that remain unsigned. So I can honestly see them working something in. The problem with that and doing it this late now is that think about pitchers and catchers are reporting today. So the longer it takes for us to get somebody signed, the more that pushes them back as being a difference maker for the beginning of the season. So I really hope that they can make something work with somebody, because obviously our bullpen was a very huge broken piece last year. So and even if the guys that we have now, our beloveds can come through and go back to, the halfway decent bullpen that we had in 2017. I mean, we're still looking at improvements there, just for example, Edwards, I honestly see him having a much better year this year. And Strop is just Strop. I mean, he's just amazing. And let's not forget we have Brandon Morrow, who can be a very dominating closer if he's healthy. So, there's a lot of question marks, a lot of ifs, and a lot of, if it goes this way, that sort of thing. So hopefully they see fit to add at least one more big piece that can eat some innings, even maybe a middle reliever. Do I think that the Cubs are the one of the surprise teams for Machado? I do not. I think we were probably out on Machado a while ago. I think that he's going to end up going to the Yankees. And I know that sounds crazy because there's been a ton of talk today about him dropping hints about going to the White Sox. So I would not be upset if he went to the White Sox. I would think that would be really good for the city. He's a good player. He's got some things to work out. and strictly coming from a PR standpoint, he probably needs to figure that out too a little bit. Just his own PR, because I think that's really hurt him this offseason, especially the way that he ended playoffs with his kind of nonchalant attitude. I think that really hurt him. I think he could have probably already been somewhere with max money had none of that ever happened. So I don't think that the Cubs are in on him. Everything I've read and everywhere I've seen, they stopped mentioning us a long time ago. Now, do I feel like we're still in on Harper is the other question, not a question that I was asked, but I'm going to go ahead and answer it anyways. I honestly, and this sounds ridiculous because like Jesse Rogers, when he is on ESPN 1000, I can literally feel like he is screaming directly at me when he says this. Like, I feel like he is directly talking to me. Like, Andy, you're an idiot. Stop with this. This is not happening. It's not working out. It's not going to get it out of your mind. In all reality, I still feel like there's a chance that Bryce could end up being a Cub. I'm just going to say it. But the percentage of that chance has definitely gone down quite a bit. I mean, and that's kind of why I forced myself to reevaluate who we have and where everybody is, and their performance in 2017 compared to 2018 compared to hopefully where it'll be in 2019. So was there another part to that question that I completely skipped over? I feel like there was like a 3-parter there.
Just the positions. What positions do you think they should be focusing on?
Well, it would be really nice if they could move Addison Russell. That would be great. And for many reasons. I think obviously, I'm a female, so I have very strong opinions on his off-field issues. But he has not been a difference maker on the field in quite some time. And I honestly feel like one has to do with the other. I think you can kind of tell when his play started going left when he started to have the off-field issues. So I think, yeah, I mean, he showed at one point in time that he probably had some really promising upside to him, but I don't think it's worth it anymore. I think we got to cut our ties. I think in the business sense, and I have, obviously studied this part of it. I think the whole point of keeping him on the roster and working with him and his domestic violence counseling and trying to get him back in good playing form, I think they're trying to up his value, obviously.
Yep.
I don't think the intention is to keep him. I honestly don't. It's just not a good look. But in the business sense of things, you cannot let someone that had and showed as much talent as he did walk away and get nothing. Not in this day and age, not in this business. I feel dirty saying that because of who we're talking about and what he has done. But in all honesty, that is the case. And that is, I think, what the end game is for Theo and company to with this Addison Russell situation. So I could see them, trying to maybe find a utility player that can play shortstop, that they can just add to that rotation, because currently Addison Russell obviously is on the restricted list, so he still has some more of his suspension to serve. So you're looking at Javier Baez and David Bodie at shortstop, which to me, I that doesn't really excite me a whole lot. But it's doable. I mean, they can definitely do it. They've showed they can do it. So I think, yeah, definitely a utility player or possibly even bullpen. And I think it's even been mentioned. I think Theo's actually even said verbatim that they're still looking for bullpen help. So that's where I think they'll end up addressing issues.
It's kind of like, I don't know, like thinking about that whole, like the value statement, like it kind of makes me think like some of the talk I've heard around was like even like Le'Veon Bell in the NFL, or who's it, like Antonio Brown, I think it is. Like both who have absolutely no interest in like playing for the teams that they're signed for. And it's like those teams are going to get zero value just because of like the way their attitude is, and it's like the team almost like kind of wrote them off. So it's kind of like, all right, we're just going to kind of scrap you for whatever we can get. And no, I mean, that does make sense. It's kind of sad that that's the way that, like, I mean, I can understand if the organization is really trying to like rehabilitate. It's like, I know my thoughts on that are not, it's one of those things where it's like, I really don't see people changing their ways that drastically, you know? But the organization trying to sell it as, yeah, it's like, you know, he's trying, and it's like, and with that will come, you know, good play, just so that they can kind of drop them to get, you know, something of value, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and the rough part about that is they just it's hard to defend. I mean, you know, we're catching a lot of slack from other, you know, fans. I mean, obviously me living in St. Louis, this is definitely a point where they love to bring up, well, you know, at least we don't have any women beaters on our team, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's that part is really hard, and it's really tough to defend, and it's really tough to, like, that was a major piece of why I could not get excited for this season. But I am not going to let, and this is kind of something I just decided, and I think everyone has to just figure it out on their own, like where they stand. I've been a Cubs fan as long as I can remember. I mean, from birth. And I have cheered them in seasons where it was dreadfully painful to cheer them. I've wore Cubs gear in St. Louis in years when it was dreadfully painful to wear Cubs gear in St. Louis. I've been through the ringer with this darn team. I'm not going to let one dude who is not a good dude ruin how I feel about this team that I've worshipped my whole life. So, you know, and as much as we say it's the owners, it's the front office, it's whatever. It's not. They're not the Cubs. To me, you know, I only know who the owners are because, you know, I'm a little bit more knowledgeable fan. There are legitimate fans who don't know who the owners are. They don't care. You know what I mean? There's people that aren't interested in that aspect of the game. The owners aren't the Cubs. The front office aren't the Cubs. We look at those guys because we study the game. We study the team. We like to know the transaction side of things. We like to know the business side of things. But the everyday fan does not care about that stuff. They really don't. They want to love a baseball team. They want to, you know, they want to love a franchise. They want to love a tradition. And honestly, that's what the Cubs are to so many people. And that's why sometimes you have to just kind of remove that aspect from the game, because we know it doesn't mean that it has to change how we feel about our team, you know? So that's kind of what I've decided. And I've kind of went on it off on my own because, you know, I do say, I do like, you know, go on my rampages on social media about certain things. And it's, you know, some days I feel a certain way and some days I don't. I will never agree with the way that they've handled this Addison Russell situation, but that does not make me change how I feel about a team that I've loved as long as I can remember. That's like one piece of it. And why it's, you know, it's not a great piece. It does not represent who the Cubs are to me. So.
Yeah, and really the word tradition is the one that like really like hits it. I mean, even like, yeah, man, I guess that's one of the things I guess I'm the one that struggles with is the whole tradition thing. But I can see how like in every sport for every team, it's like, yeah, it's like a tradition of following, you know, because there's the majority of my family is Cubs fans, and they make it the tradition to go down to, you know, like they go down to Wrigley. I do have a section of the family which are White Sox fans too. And I mean, that's their tradition, you know, it's like that's how they were raised. It's like, and that's just who they've always followed. Same with kind of like, you know, Bears, like Hawks, like, I mean, just from the Chicago aspect, but I mean, yeah, I can see that all around too, you know? So, no.
Oh yeah,
And
dude, born into it, you know, diehard fans, man. Absolute diehard fans. Hey, so let's I kind of want to sort of switch it up, and before we sort of forget something, Bryz, I wanted to come back and touch base about the front office. So, you just very adamantly and very thoroughly discussed, Addison Russell. So, also, what are your takes necessarily regarding like, the whole thing with like the Ricketts and stuff, and just like, the off-season things that personally, my personal opinion on this is that like, if I feel like if it was any other front office, like I feel like this would be something almost like that could almost go out of control. And it's like these guys are such a class act that this all this stuff is handled and contained, and like it's very controlled is what it feels like. What's your takes on the front office and the organization?
Well, I think if you guys want to read, I love Len Casper. Like, he by far has quickly become one of my most favorite people to follow on Twitter. He is, a joy to listen to every Cubs game. I have the opportunity of listening to him, but on Twitter, this man can write. Like, he is a literary wizard. He described, like, okay, to me, Theo is the fact that he can handle the situations that, not one, but two, just demoralizing situations that the Chicago Cubs have went through this offseason. He handled what he said in the presser today. He handled that like a pro. Like, he wrote the book today on how to do that. He is so eloquent with his words. He is just, I'm going to tell you right now, there is nobody else that could have handled that as well as he did. Nobody else. How many good speakers have I ever heard? I've heard quite a few. I am actively looking, I like to be moved. I like to hear powerful speakers. I like to, so I will actively look for things like that. He is just, it's just mind blowing how good he is at his job. And he just makes it look effortless. And if you want to read some very good takes on how sports media feels about Theo, go look up Len Casper and his tweets on him, because he puts it perfectly. Without Theo, the Cubs would be the absolute laughing stock right now of professional sports. And that's keeping in mind the catastrophe that's known as the Chicago Bulls right now.
Oh my God.
We're talking about the issues with football. All the different things going on in professional sports. Theo he handled that whole situation today. He handled that eloquently, because that could have went a very different direction if anybody else had been up there talking. He was just very matter of fact. He owned up to a lot of stuff that they finally needed to own up to. He basically kind of put Addison Russell on notice, like, this is how we feel. This is where we're at. 50% of the people in this industry that I spoke to that are in the position of me or higher said that they would have cut ties with Addison a long time ago. And here I am standing by him. So take this as warning. This is, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously, take this as warning. Like, everybody's jobs are on the line right now, like everybody's. So, he's such a, he motivates me to do stuff when I don't even do close to what he does, if that makes sense. Like, he makes me want to do better at what it is I do, because he is just, I wish I could just stand up and speak in front of people 5 minutes the way that he does. He's so good at that. And like Len Casper said, and it's not teachable. What he has is not teachable. Like, it's his personality. It's where he's been in his life at such a young age. It's just such an asset. And that's another one that we need to go ahead and sign that contract in blood, because that dude needs to stick around for a long time.
100%,
a long time. So yeah, as far as the front office is concerned, I'm trying to stay on the positive side of things because I feel like when I record with Chipper tomorrow night, that might be a little bit. We might have a little bit more negativity. So I'm trying. I'm trying to stay positive, and I definitely think that Theo is a huge bright spot in the front office. I think there's some Crane Kenny for one. I think I think we probably are seeing. I don't know what his contract details look like, but we are probably seeing the final couple bouts out of him. I think his time might be about expired. There's just a lot of things that I feel like have been promised and have been told to us that the front office is failing on. And unfortunately, there has to be somebody that takes the hit for all that. And I think Crane Kenny is probably going to be that dude. But I mean, I like Tom Ricketts. I've met him personally. I actually, one of my coworkers who is out of our office in Chicago sent me a signed baseball from Tom Ricketts, which I thought was really cool. I wasn't really proud about it in that moment because it was the exact day that his father's emails came out. So, yeah, so I was like, I'm just going to tuck this away for a little while and not mention, because normally something like that, I would have taken a picture and posted it on everything and been so excited. And I mean, I sent a picture of it to my family, but other than that, I was like, yeah, we're going to tuck this away for a while. So, I think it's good to focus on what we have that's working. And I think Theo for sure is what's working with this organization. And if it weren't for him, I honestly, I would hate to see where we're at with all the issues that we've taken on this off season. So, I mean, he's phenomenal and he's the best in the business. And if you disagree with that, you're not paying attention.
For sure. I love the slight for the to the Bulls, because that's kind of sort of been a running joke, honestly, between us at the Cubes in the Cube Farm, basically. We listen to the score a lot, and hearing the whole like Paxson debacle and Gar Forman debacle, it's just like, man, talk about like just like an absolute joke. Oh my God, the Bulls! Wow.
Well, I mean, and to hear that, like, and I haven't, because I live in St. Louis, I don't get all of the games if they're on ESPN or TBS or TNT. I get, I'll watch them then. And they're painful even then to watch. I'll watch highlights later if I have to. But I mean, like, just to hear that Jabari Parker came and like had a field day on the Chicago Bulls, like, to me, that is so, oh my goodness, that is like drinking a bottle of your own medicine. Like, it's like, dude, no. There are so many people that should not have jobs there that continue to have jobs. And, and God knows, everybody knows how much I love my Bulls. I love my Bulls. I am diehard Bulls. I've always been diehard Bulls. And I will stay with them till the end. But just right now, they make it so very hard. And thankfully, I was a Cubs fan when they made it very hard. So I'm used to this. I'm just not used to this with the Bulls. So
it's
rough. It's rough.
The insight that they provide on the score is insane. Like, so I don't know if you heard about this, if this made it down to St. Louis or not. I'll just touch on this really quick. But the whole thing with like how, we've got so much cap space, and yet like we cannot pull anybody, we can't trade for anybody. Nobody wants to sign with us. And so, we made the move and we got Otto Porter, and we traded Portis to the Wizards. Bobby Portis comes back the next day and like totally balls out, and and by balls out, I mean he's like, he blocked a couple of shots, and I can't remember the exact points that he scored, but like he totally showed out in front of the Chicago Bulls bench. Like there's a highlight where he blocked somebody's shot, it was ridiculous, and he flexes in front of the bench, and honestly, I loved it. Like it's just so it's like a soap opera with the front office. I'm more into the drama with the front office and Paxson than I am the Bulls right now. And it's like, I mean, I don't know if you caught any of that or not, but like there was a whole thing where where he was discussing, and Vince actually brought this up even too on a couple episodes ago on the podcast, where there's some the on-air personalities are really giving it to Paxson, and he's answering the best that he possibly can, but and he's trying to kind of save his face, but Paxson was literally or the question got proposed to him, so how do you feel about the whole mutiny thing, and just the way how this feeling about your team is to the organization. He's like, what? I don't even know what you're talking about. You need to cite some very specific examples. And so literally the next day they came back and they had this whole montage of all these different players talking about just they think they think the Bulls are just a joke. I mean, just an absolute joke, from everything from how Hoiberg, when he was brought in, dude was just totally set up for failure. I mean, he never even had an opportunity to succeed whatsoever at all. And then, you let go of him and you bring in Jim Boylan, who basically treated the professionals as eighth graders and made them run sprints. The one thing that I heard
eighth graders, yes.
Was that when you, and Vince, I don't know if you caught this or not, but basically there was somebody that had said that if you're playing back-to-backs, you have the next day off to recoup. The fact that Boylan was making these guys do suicides was just they're you got to be kidding me, and they're talking about doing film and stuff like that, and what they would do on a day off, but what Boylan was forcing this team to do, and the way how he's publicly shaming his players and stuff. I mean, it's just it is just so much drama. There's more drama with the Bulls than there is on Project Runway, bro.
I know, right? Man,
I'm telling you.
I don't know if I would go with the challenge or something, but that's probably about equal drama. But
so Bryz, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. This has been so much fun. This has been exciting. I feel like we've given the listeners, every opportunity to jump onto the Cubs bandwagon this year, thanks to you and thanks to Chipper and stuff. And definitely when you guys get that podcast, I know that when it'll be coming, but by all means, we'd love to share the links to the podcast and stuff on all of our channels and stuff too as well. And looking forward to an absolute great season. My last question to you is, out of the players that we have, who do you feel is and obviously Chris Bryant could come back from an injury plague season. Rizzo could maybe his numbers would be a little bit better. So let's not necessarily say those two, but who is the sleeper that you feel is really going to come through this year on the Cubs?
Well, see, now I hope Chipper's not listening, because we're going to talk about this tomorrow too. I am going to surprise some people with this one, because I just have a different feeling this year. And kind of my thought, the same as I'm sure, people have heard me say this a million times, but you can't continue to do the same things and expect different results. So my whole thought is I'm going to start looking in places where I've never looked before for some production, because like I said, guys are on notice right now. So people are going to lose their jobs after this season if there's not, or even before the season's over, if stuff isn't changing, if people aren't improving in areas where they were lacking, if they're not showing some real progress. So I'm going to go with Schwarber this year. I think Schwarber he's going to have a really breakout year for a number of different reasons. I think he is kind of onto the fact that, he's not really become somebody that we've come to rely on for offensive production, or defensively, he's a liability. And I think he's really tired of that. Obviously, you never want to have a defensive liability in left field. To me, that's one of the most important positions on the field. But his bat is just, I just honestly, I think this year, I don't know that he's going to tear the cover off the ball. I hope that he does, but I think he's going to be a lot more productive offensively. And for the love of God, if people don't start to take him serious in left field, I'm going to laugh Every single time you people try to run on him and he throws you out at second. Every single time. And you can ask my husband, you could probably ask my neighbors four doors down. I scream at you people every single time you run on him and he throws you out. When are you going to learn? So I'm a defensive person. I love defense because I was always really good at defense and I couldn't hit the ball for anything. That's why they turned me around and made me bat left. But I am a defensive person, so I understand not being taken serious in when you're playing out of position. He's obviously not a left fielder, but he's done all the things that he needs to do to prove that he can be taken serious out there. He had, you know what, I can think of maybe on one hand, maybe 5 the entire season, really bad plays where his lack of experience in left field really showed through. But that is a huge turnaround from the year before. That's huge.
True. Yes.
So he's definitely making progress. He's going in the right direction. I just really need to see him have a little bit more patience and better pitch selection at the plate. And honestly, I just feel like this is his year. I feel like he's really going to prove to those people that want to get rid of him to the American League that he's a Cub. I mean, obviously the front office loves him because I know they've have had opportunities to move him and they're pretty stuck on him. So if, you know, those people are professionals and they have reasons for feeling that way. So I'm kind of jumping on the Schwarber bandwagon. So let's go with it. I can't wait to see what he shows us. I think it's going to be something good this year. So
I 100% love that pick. And I really, really, really hope that all of that happens. I really, truly do. He's been the one guy that, like, during the off season and towards the trading deadline, when you're talking about trades, like, the pieces and stuff that the Cubs would have to give up to acquire a really high profile player or whatever, he was the one piece that I would just be like, no, I don't, but at the same time, I want him to be able to flourish. He's the one guy that I can't help but to cheer for and stuff. And so, yeah, if he can come through, and it's, I mean, his numbers, his average wasn't great, but I mean, his home run numbers were pretty decent. I mean, and I mean, I'd be happy with what he did, as far as those power number wise, and hopefully we can get the average up a little bit. I feel like the answer is, and I haven't really researched this, I haven't looked at anybody else to see what they say. I think inevitably for me, I personally would love to see Almora, do something as well too. The defense that he provides out in center field is like second to basically nobody in my opinion. He covers the whole entire field and makes some of these incredible plays. He showed promise also too, as far as coming up in big situations, batting and stuff. So I just feel like, he could get some playing time. And just really, be like it, get to the point where he is like the everyday center fielder and possibly even leadoff person too, with the lineup that the Cubs have, and who knows with maybe whatever future transactions they may also have. It's there's no telling how the lineup is going to be because we know how Joe is when it comes to the lineup. So I do miss the solidified everyday leadoff person that was Dexter Fowler. We haven't had one since he's left. I feel like, man, it's just slotted perfectly for Almora if he could take that opportunity and really run with it. So that personally is for me. You could go ahead and pass that along to Chipper tomorrow, Bryz, if you'd like.
Of course. Hey, I have one thing I got to slide in on you guys. So while we're sitting here talking, of course, I have my Twitter up in front of me, and one entity that I follow and I've grown to trust quite a bit just tweeted, I'm reading this from someone else's Twitter, being told tonight, and like I said, he's, as far as I'm concerned, he's a very trustworthy source. He was one of the first people that predicted Yu Darvish to the Cubs, or said that he had heard Darvish was going to the Cubs last year. So if that at all gives him any credibility. He said, being told that the Giants are now out on Harper sweepstakes. The Cubs, however, are not. So
wow.
There's a cliffhanger for that, but so yeah, sorry. I had to sneak that in there because he likes to give us stuff like that. And like I said, I'm not convinced that we're not completely out on the Harper sweepstakes. So,
I get so torn with Harper because like like I said, I was the guy that was like, you couldn't tell me that we're not signing him, and then I was totally fine with us not having him and going forward with the team that we got, and now we're just scratching away at the scab. Basically, we're opening her back up. I'm so ready for us to sign Harper tomorrow. I cannot wait. And then you guys get to cover it on the Ivy Boys, and you guys can discuss all about it along with everything else that you guys have slated.
I know it'll be like a 4-hour show.
Oh man! So last thing, just curious, did you happen to see what this year's team slogan is going to be?
I did. It was. Is it? What is it? Hold on. Own it now. Own it now.
There it is. There it is.
That is huge because part of the reason why he picked the word own was because if you reverse it, it's one.
There it is.
Yeah.
Now, if you reverse now, one. Still.
Own.
It's right there.
Yeah. Own it now is one. Yes. Thank you. Jesus. Wow. What time is it? Is it past my bedtime?
It's getting super late.
One of the words is one backwards. That's all I know. One of the words is one backwards. That's all I know. But own it now is the, and that to me is also a reminder that you guys are on notice. Like now is the time. So, and which
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Like, yeah, I love that they are going to be reminded of that the entire season. So no pressure.
Awesome. All right, Vincent, final thoughts with you. What do you think? How are you feeling about going into the season?
I'm feeling pretty great, man. Let me tell you, all this news, it's gonna be one awesome season.
Oh man, awesome!
And I mean, dude, those catchers and those outfielders,
awesome.
Man.
All right,
just gonna own it. But
I think that's a wrap. Once again, we want to send special thanks. Check out the Ivy Boys at theivyboys.com. Bryz, go ahead and tell us how we can find you guys and listen to the podcast.
Oh gosh, I'm going to fail at this miserably because this is Chipper's area. So my Twitter handle is at Bryz_Blue. You can find me on there. When we record episodes, we post them on our website, which is oh my gosh, ivyboys.com. Bob, I'm not good at this. This is Chipper's job. And then Chipper, you can follow Chipper on Twitter at Chipper Strike 3, just the number 3.
Just the number 3.
I nailed it. Okay. And then we also have our Twitter handle, the Ivy Boys, at the Ivy Boys. Chipper runs that one. We also have at Chipper and Bryz Show. I run that one. So any of those ways, if you follow Bob or follow Vincent, either of those gentlemen follow us and retweet our stuff quite a bit, which we appreciate. Thank you. So you can always find us that way too. We are now back in season. So we will be recording weekly, and I know this is hard to believe because everyone now knows how much I love to talk, but I'm also a blogger. I like to write. So I will start writing. And my writing, obviously we are not professionals. None of us claim to be. I love to write. I love sports. So I just sometimes combine the two, and sometimes it's, very interesting numbers and comparisons. And other times it's just my experiences with going to games and stuff like that. So I try to keep it interesting and light. And like I said, we don't claim to be professionals. We just enjoy it. So we do it and hope that somebody else may like it too. So but thank you so much for having me on and getting us going this season. This is kind of my kickoff, like, since I get to do this all over again tomorrow night. So
Absolutely. I have no doubt that you're going to totally run just all over Chipper tomorrow. I cannot wait to hear the podcast once it comes out. So, yeah. So, everybody, thank you for listening. Once again, thank you so much, Bryz, for jumping on to the podcast and recording with us. Hopefully, we could do it again sometime during the season and just, you catch up and see how the season is going.
Absolutely. I would love to. Anytime. You guys just let me know.
For sure. Awesome. Well, once again, we appreciate everybody for listening. This is Beyond the Cube. Once again, thank you so much. We're out.
Yep,
Craig,
thank
get
you.
out of here, man.